Hey guys, and welcome to the Lunge and Lift podcast. Today, Ash and myself are discussing all the things we've kind of done wrong over the years. So our training mistakes, our nutrition mistakes, and so forth. But I thought it'd be quite nice to maybe start off with a couple of riddles, Ash. So I thought I'd throw some at you. I really enjoyed the Would You Rathers the other day. So I thought rather than doing them, I thought got some riddles and see how good you are. Get that brain switched on. So first one, what is yours but mostly used by others?
Easy. Name.
Yeah. Thank you. Good stuff. Okay. What can your children give you that you can't get yourself?
Grandchildren.
Yes. Well done. What becomes wetter the more it dries?
Wetter the more it dries. It dries or it tries?
Dries.
Dries. Drawing blank.
Okay. A towel.
Uh,
It's so annoying. Yeah. Two more. If you have 5 apples on a bench and you remove 2, how many apples do you have?
2.
Well done. Well done. Some months have 30 days and some have 31. How many months have 28 days?
1.
No, 12. All months have 28 days.
Oh,
It's so annoying, isn't it? You're like, oh. So, right, okay, enough of the fun stuff. Well, we're now into the proper fun stuff. So, as we say, mistakes. Mistakes are, I guess, only mistakes if you don't learn from them. That's something which, when we was obviously trying to get some points for this episode, I was listing a lot of scenarios and things that have happened to me over my training career, but I've learned a lot from all of them, and they've kind of built me into the person I am now. But I thought it'd be really interesting to maybe kind of starting out with like some of the mistakes you made when you was a bit younger, like when you were I guess just starting out in training or in fitness. So
yeah. I think the thing going through prep for this episode that stood out was that there have been a lot of mistakes from both of us. So if I think back to probably when I started going to the gym at school, I remember me and one of my best mates, Freddie, we learned the concept of training to failure and then thought that was essential and the most important thing and you should do it all the time. And we were doing the leg extension machine, trying to build up those quads, and we would just do these drop sets. In my memory, I feel like we got close to full stack at the age of about 14 or 15, wow. But that probably is not true at all. Yeah. It's just rose-tinted glasses. But we would do these ridiculous drop sets where we'd basically go to failure on the heaviest weight we could, take one plate off, go to failure again, take one plate off and go to failure again. So we were literally going to absolute failure. I think obviously when you're like a teenage boy, you're completely unwilling to back down in any way possible or show any weakness. And by the end, we're doing like almost an empty stack with assistance, trying to grind out the last few. And I remember once, I didn't even notice it in session, but later that day, I think I probably played squash afterwards or something. And then, yeah, exactly. Then the next day, my thigh was just black, like it was just like bruised all over. And I remember we had some session with the school doctor. I can't remember what it was, but it was like I can't remember what the session was, but it was basically like a Q&A. You could ask anything you wanted. I was like, yeah, this has happened. Like, yeah, I think you've ripped it. And the thing is, it didn't hurt that much, but like obviously there'd been a lot of trauma for that much blood to leak out and blacken the leg. So that was a big lesson in that failure has its role and its purpose, but it's not a question of more is better. And once the muscle's failed, it's failed, and you've got to moderate slightly how much failure and how intense the failure is, because there's only so much you can recover from before your next session.
That's definitely, I've definitely had times like that myself. I remember, going back then, it's always been biceps. It's always just going hell for leather until you're physically and when I very first found out about blood flow restriction training, and it was the tighter the better. That is not the case. Where you physically can't feel your arm, you're trying to do a curl. I remember doing it with one of my mates, Adam, and I think we were doing it on the leg extension machine. That's it. And so we got his knee wraps, put them around our legs, and I still got a video of it. And him trying to do a leg extension with just the pad and just not being able to do it. And it's like, this is obviously when it first kind of started becoming apparent. So this is good, like 5-6 years ago, and yeah, I mean, we definitely did it wrong at times, but at the same time, is in you're learning from it, and it's like the blood flow restriction is great, but maybe not that tight. So
yeah, that's very dangerous if you go super tight on something like that. How about you, mate? What are some of your mistakes from when you were younger?
I've made so many, but I think a lot of my training mistakes have kind of like been from just pure inexperience and just like learning, which I'm still like inexperienced to some degree and still learning along the way. But I think one of my major ones was probably my fashion sense when I started lifting. I remember wearing like the 5-finger Vibrams, basketball shorts, and the vest. Those, yeah. Don't get me wrong, I think barefoot training is great, and I still got a pair of Vivo barefoots, you know, because I'm still a big fan of that. I just think the 5 fingers maybe were a bit much, you know.
No, yeah, I'd say I had them for a long time, and I used to be that weirdo when I started at the CrossFit gym in Clapham. I used to be that weirdo, and they are good, but they don't need to look weird.
No,
that's probably my gripe with most barefoot shoes. Like even some of the Vivos are nice, but there's not yet a great looking barefoot shoe.
No, that's true. Well, it's like the ones I got. Just like the black ones, they're just all black, just flat sole, wide front, so their feet can they're great, and I think I've absolutely love them, and I think they're a great training shoe, and I think most people should probably have a pair of them to at least get that, or at least, especially like when they're squatting or stuff like that, or deadlifting for sure, that they're barefoot, they're being as close to the floor as possible. And I like the shoes because it just gives you that sense of security for the grip, and like so you know socks aren't slipping and so forth. But I think when I look back as well, it's just then obviously like wearing shorts that then when you squat down they catch on the knees, and I mean my basketball shorts, I still got them. I've had them for probably like 15 years now. So, and they
never played basketball.
Well, the very few times I did, I'm just like with football. I'm just like a headless chicken. I just chase, and I've always end up getting injured. And I think that would be a good mistake of just not doing anything skillfully, and just giving it my all is in my heart, and just giving that, and that is all well and good, but you normally end up coming out the other side getting injured, like with concussions and stuff like that, like with rugby and stuff. So
what other injuries have you had?
Well, I've obviously, when playing the basketball a few times with a bunch of other PTs, it always me falling over, get the burn on the inside of the yard, like always that. Quite a few concussions, say from rugby, from just where I wasn't brought up playing it, so I never learnt the skill of tackling really that well. And in the earlier days, it was always be tackling wrong, head down in rugby league, whereas an upright rugby, so getting knocked out quite easily. And I broke my ankle playing touch rugby, so someone fell on me. Someone fell on my ankle, and so I broke my left ankle, and that was while I was at college. I've definitely had a fair few injuries over the years, and I tore my hamstring, and not even in a fun way. So again, rugby league, it was. I got tackled completely fine, got up, played the ball, and this is in training. This isn't even in a game. This is in training. Played the ball, kicked it through under my legs. As I stood up and pushed off my leg to get out of the way, I just felt like a ping, and then I was like, okay, that's really uncomfortable. It should be all right. Tried to run around a bit more, and I just started to let the jog get a little bit slower, and I was like, okay, yeah, I can't. And then just started to get black, and it didn't get better, and I was like, okay, cool. And by the time I got home, like the blood had pooled in underneath, behind my knee and at the top. So it was in both top and bottom. And so I've got the photos and like of it, and like, of the progression. And that was a really interesting thing to actually see, like that. And like I just not long before had I done my, like when I deadlifted 275, or like when I did that one. So I'd done that at Inferno's, and then it was probably like I say a month or two later, I then did that. So in my head, I've just got as strong as I can. I'm never going to get strong again. And I remember like then like that was then a mistake, and it is. I was then rushing back like the rehab side of things, and I was like, oh, my hamstring will be fine now. Once I started to get a bit more movement, then tried deadlifting like quite light, but then it caused more of like DOMS was just a lot longer. It just wasn't ready for it, and I rushed the gun. And I think the lesson for the listeners, for myself, there is that thing of, if you have got an injury, understand it will get better most of the time. To just give it the time. It's just we try and get back to where we was so quickly that we rush that process of healing, and you don't want to rush the process of healing. You want it to happen as the body wants to, because then it just means it's going to heal back stronger and just better because you've given it the time to do it. And that's, I guess, have you come? I know you've had quite a few injuries over the years, haven't you?
Yeah. I think just on that one, impatience is probably going to be a recurring theme throughout this episode. Thinking through everything. But one injury I had at uni, which was basically blew my back out playing rugby, and the build up to that was I didn't have a gym membership. So and when I just got to uni, it was probably the first time I'd ever got lean, and I just got these 18-year-old abs, and I was like, I need to hang on to these. So basically, to try and hang on to them and counterbalance the university lifestyle, I would just do shitloads of sit-ups in my bedroom and no other training, and just constant just spinal flexion. And I think it left me pretty imbalanced, and layering on rugby on top of that, I just blew my back out. And I remember going to the physio, and they're asking me about what I'd been doing and what had led up to the situation. I was like, in hindsight, it's probably quite a bad idea to just train one movement and one side of the core. But I think lesson learned from that is that a proper, more functional training program was probably going to prepare me for rugby a little bit better.
True, but at the same time, is in like, you say that now with the experience that you've gained and the knowledge that you've learned, is in like, back then, there was no such thing as really functional training, really. And the people that did do functional training were weirdos. So it's like, oh, who's this guy wanting to bounce on a Bosu and stuff like that? Like, that was functional training. And it was just like, it had this stigma where, everything was about the six-pack muscles, the big chest, the big arms, the men's fitness, men's health. That's what it was. And it's only obviously really from CrossFit and even when that started, obviously it was still a bit weird, but then it still does get bashed for being weird. But it's in like, it's now getting so much more integrated within the fitness industry. But when you got people that aren't in the industry looking from the outside in, it's still the weird stuff, and you're still thinking, it's chest, back, arms, maybe legs. It's like, that's what the Gen Pop still think training is. And it's like, but that's obviously where they go to the gym and they look the same after a year of doing the same stuff, and they wonder why. And it's like, that's the opportunity to learn. You see, say, PTs doing fancy things. Okay, not every PT does it right, but it's in like, you might see quite a few PTs doing some stuff that you don't do. It might be worth asking, what is that you're doing? Why are you doing that? Why am I not doing that? Why am I doing this lat raise seated? Like, do you know what I mean? It's like that has a place, but I think that comes in. Again, I was talking to people. It's like, I remember when I was working for Balfour Beatty when I was a surveyor, and so I signed up. I got a charity place for the London Marathon through Balfour Beatty. So I was like, right, okay, cool, I'm doing that then. And at the time, it was like, I think I got the place in like, say, October, I think it was, or November. And it had been snowing and stuff like that. So I didn't really run that much. And I was like, right, okay, I'm cycling. This will be good. And at the time, I lived in, basically, I lived 26 miles away from the place I worked. So I cycled there and I cycled home. I was like, right, 52 miles of cycling a day should be good training for a 26-mile run. Right, it's half the distance, right? It's half the amount of leg work. So, so at the time, this was back in 2010. So it's a good while ago. And but so I'm doing all that, and I'd done a half marathon and a 10K before that. I did a couple of runs in between, but I'd never ran more than a half marathon because apparently that's all you really needed. And I remember once I hit past the half marathon, when I did that marathon itself, that wall hit hard, and it was just like the cramps. So it was Yeah, when I look back at photos, and like it doesn't look like I'm running, and I probably really wasn't. But it was one hell of an experience, which is why at the time I remember saying like, I want to do another one with some training. But I don't think I could do just a marathon now. I think I just get too bored, which is why I kind of want to do an Ironman, because I want to be challenged to the max rather than just be challenged in just running. So, yeah. But just because I think that's kind of come from like over the years of everything, like training for like CrossFit. It's why I love CrossFit so much, because it's so stimulating. There's so much to do, and there's so many challenges that you have to overcome. And so I guess
weaknesses.
Exactly, and that's definitely something. I think that's a massive one for me. When I started out, I was always just playing to my strengths. I was like, yeah, I don't need to worry about those weaknesses, which I think over the years has definitely hindered me. But at the same time, I think, was it all that bad if I've now got really good at certain things and not that good at other things? So
I think it's a personal priority call that, do you want to be a generalist or a specialist, or would you prefer to be very good at a few things or just good at a lot of things? And there's no right or wrong. I think everyone should have the basic fundamentals of just, the fundamental human movement patterns so that they're competent at life and they can go about their daily business without hurting themselves. And then beyond that, it's very much just up to the individual as to whether they want to be, like a 100-meter sprinter or a javelin thrower. That's super cool, and you're allowed to have your one sport. But if you prefer to be a CrossFitter and be great at loads of other things, that's also cool. But there's no right or wrong beyond the basics. That said, I'm going to jump ahead off plan a little bit to one of my weaknesses, and that was doing absolutely zero cardio for quite a long time because I basically felt fit enough to do the sports that I was playing, but I had a moment of rude awakening when I was on a training camp and judging Jamie Green do a workout, and the workout was basically some power cleans, and then you'd go to the track just next to the weightlifting platforms, carry a sandbag 100 meters, run back, do your next power cleans, go back out to the sandbag, carry it another 100 meters, run 200 meters back, do the power cleans until it was 400 meters full lap. And just running alongside her with her sandbag, my whoop kicked in and thought I'd done a very intense high strain workout. I was like, she's been carrying a sandbag for half of this and jogging and doing power cleans. I'm just counting reps, and I've got a serious strain on this. It's like, oh, this is like more than your normal average for a functional fitness workout. I was like, fuck, that's not the way it should be. So at that point, I decided that I should probably add in a little bit more running so that I'm at least fit enough to judge somebody doing a workout, if not do one myself.
I think that's right though. It's in like, you made that call yourself based on an experience. You saw something was up and you thought, do you know, because for some that might be like, do you know what, I can't keep up, and that's fine. It is what it is. I don't really care. Like, and that can be like on our Q&A episode the other week, where it was where my mate messaged in and saying about wants to keep up with his running fitness but still wants to look good. And it's like, it is that balance. Is like, you can still have it all, but you have to understand that maybe one might drop down slightly as the other one comes up. You to have it all, there has to be a focus of like your life. But for day to day, for the everyday person, and I do feel it's like, I think when I come to terms with that, I wasn't going to be a sportsman. Not that I ever really knew I was ever going to be anyway, but because I started so late in everything that I kind of just, every time I can't do something, I then want to do it and get better at it. And so I'll happily be just like good at everything and great at maybe like a little bit, like nothing made. But it's like, as I said like before to yourself and that, it's like within CrossFit, to be able to look at any workout that gets put up and know that I could do that. I might not do it well, but I can do that. So for me, that's like my life goal now, just to be able to always do what life puts in front of me. Right. And then so that's for me, that's the training win. But that's come from a lot of like introspection work and stuff like that, like really understanding myself. And even like when I've moved more now into the endurance world, it's like that was a struggle in the first place, because it's like I'm the guy that trains, that lifts. I'm not the guy that has the work, like the engine. I've never had a good engine doing any of the CrossFit workouts. So why do I have the right to now do this? And it was kind of that reality for me. And I was like, because I'm shit at it, I want to now get good at it. And it's like,
Yeah.
but then I'm going to go back to lifting because lifting is my base, but I've just now taken a little bit of a hiatus while I get fit. So
yeah, I think it's a good thing that you relish the challenge and, you know, you enjoy the process of conquering something that has traditionally been, a lack. And I think you get a lot out of that from a sort of personal development point of view, if not just a pure fitness point of view, that taking on some adversity is good trait to have, mate.
I think as well, like when you then, like for me, doing something like say an Ironman will be something that I have to follow the program, because it's something where it's so far out of me. And even at the moment where I'm doing a cycling program, I'm still adding in stuff. Did a 15k run the other day. Foolishness. Yeah. And you know, from a 10k to 15k, like no in between. And I know I did accidentally miss a turning. So there was literally and because I was in my head, I was running like the cycle route that I was doing, and then when I realised I'd missed the turning, I was so far out. I was like, I can't bother to walk back, so I'm just going to do it now. I had the nerve to say to myself, I'm going to do a half marathon. And I was like, don't you fucking dare. You're going to just don't. And I stopped, and I was really glad I did, because the next day I could barely walk. But where I wanted to go with that was, I think following the program is something which I've always struggled with. And that's probably a biggest mistake, because, you know, I'm coming from, and I'd like to know from your point, but coming from like a professional background, you know, when it's what you can do, you think, I don't think I should do that. I should do this and stuff like, because you know, as it's your strengths are coming in your head. So not following a program is probably one of the biggest weaknesses that I've had over the years.
Yeah, I think that's a massive one. And the temptation to stray off piste and, I feel good today and I feel like I could do more, is always very tempting, but that's a very short-term way of looking at things, and actually will slow your progress down long-term. And a mistake that reminds me of, from a program perspective, I've made for myself, and actually for one of my very early clients, who I apologize to now, is using the strength program 531 back in the day, which is a very famous program. But I missed a crucial step in calculating the weights that you use, in that it goes off your 90% rather than 100, your full 1 rep max. So I remember looking through his training logs and just thinking,
week 3 PB.
No, not the opposite, just like getting no reps. So you're supposed to hit 5+, so at least 5, and struggling to hit them. I was like, is he just like soft in the head? What's going on here? Because I've done this program and I know you can get at least 5, and some people get like 10, 15 reps in that max out set. And it was only like a couple of months later when I was reviewing it, just thinking, my Excel thing, I forgot to put that calculator in. And I think that, there's a couple of learnings there, isn't there? That one, overextending and overreaching too much too soon, but also just having a little bit of attention to detail and erring on the side of too little rather than too much is always safer, and allows the sustainable progress.
Yeah. So definitely, I think programming, if you do have a coach or anything like that, or you are following a program, whatever it is, just stick with it. And just, you know, I think that's a really common, especially for people that have been doing this for quite a while as well, I'd say, because there's been such a development within the fitness industry itself, that so many new things have come about. So it's been very easy to, I'm going to try this now. I'm going to try this now. And it's like that shiny penny syndrome, you know, that, this is there, this, and I'm like a prime candidate for that type of stuff. So it's like, for me, it's like the amount of things I have tried, and don't get me wrong, I've stuck through quite a fair few of them, but especially with the strength stuff, but it's, you have to give it your all, like whatever that program is, and then adjust, and then at the end of it, review it and say, okay, did this work? Why did it work? Why didn't it work? Or whatever. And that's been a big like learnings, I'd say, over the years.
Massively. The slow and steadies always wins the race. I think you won't have seen it because you're off Insta at the moment, but I just managed to get 10 by 10 ring dips, and
sick.
It was I need to post my training log on the whiteboard, but it's basically not even that long a period of time as this year, so 3 months, and adding minuscule reps each week. So I'd say, I think week 1 was 57 reps, week 2 was 60, week 3 was 62, and it's just easily progressed,
Yeah.
but over a sustained period of time, I nearly doubled my training reps, and in no week did it ever feel like I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Like, and looking back on it, if I'd have thought I'm going to be doing 10 by 10 in X weeks, I would never have believed it. But it actually happened relatively easily, and like me now compared to me back then, I think it's a big change in perspective to think that actually being happy with those small, like 2 reps extra each week makes a world of difference, and has ultimately led to a much bigger improvement in performance than I would have got if I was trying to add 10 reps every week, which probably would have lasted 1 or 2 weeks.
But that's probably the way most, including myself over the years, is like you say, right, okay, I want to do 10 by 10. Right, say that was like the initial goal. Right? I want to do 10 by 10. I'm going to go and now try 6 by 10. And then I'm going to now do 7 by 10 and 8 by 10 and wonder why. And it's like, and then you fail, then you get annoyed at yourself, and then you don't do it for a couple of weeks, and you come back to it, try again. Yeah. Okay, I'm still no stronger. Well, of course you're not. You haven't been practicing the movement, and I think it's a real good identifier of, especially with social media side of stuff, is in like when we always see the end result of everyone's. I think we might see the start and the end. Like someone say, right, I'm going to do this for this amount of time. Most people don't follow through, similar to myself at times. But as in some people that do follow through, you forget about it because they're not your life. You're not really that bothered, but you like to see people's progress. So then when it comes to 3 months down the line, like, fuck, this guy's doing 100 ring dips. At the start of the year, he was doing 50, say as an example. So, and it's like, but you don't see those 2 reps every week, or you don't see the decision not to do a chest day because it's going to impact you doing ring. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, and that's the thing, is we don't see the day-to-day wins that give you the end result. And I think all of our mistakes, as you said, it kind of all boils down to that. And it's because we want that immediate gratification, and it's only got worsened as the years have gone on. And with social media and stuff like that, is in like it's just become such a thing. I think when we talk about instant gratification, I think that's a nice segue into the next part, because that was obviously all our training problems. Now, food mistakes, like nutritional. So when obviously coming up with all these points, I had the realization to myself that it was that all my training mistakes kind of come from a lack of education, and that I get better. That as the years went on, I got better. Whereas my nutrition, so they're all physical mistakes, but they got improved. Whereas my nutritional ones were all psychological mistakes, because even though my lack of education back in the day wasn't necessarily there, my education on nutrition now is plenty good enough, but it's my habits and day-to-day choices which hinder anything. But I don't necessarily class that as a mistake, because my mistakes that come to fruition were more than the lack of education at the time, which is like my very first bodybuilding show I did was a fitness model show, Miami Pro. And I did that, and my mistake there was intermittent fasting, low calorie, just like all the cardio. Literally, I think it was like it is 6 to 12 weeks, wherever it was. And I think I've still got a video on YouTube. And it's like, I remember I pretty much did everything. And because I just didn't know, I just got into fitness, and I was like, this is it. This is what's going to be getting me. And it's going to be eating clean, eating only like the certain things, like all those type of habits. And I was thinking that got me there. Don't get me wrong, I got in okay shape, but I just looked like a flat noodle. Like it just looked shit. Then when I competed and hired a coach for my bodybuilding show, I done a lot better. That was in 6 months. I went from like 104 down to 86. So, a shed load of weight I lost, and still kept a good bit of size, still kept my strength. I remember not being able to bench 60 kilos with the Miami Pro. And then I was still able to do a 5x5 at 100 kilos with the bodybuilding show. Like just at my peak week, which I shouldn't have done. Again, that was the ego. But, I was just like, I can still do this. So that was, but the mistake for my bodybuilding show was actually the reverse diet, because I come second. I got an invitation to the finals. So that was that was going to be in September. So this show was in June. The show was in September, right? And I was like, can I diet for another like 3 months essentially, right? And I was just like, I was going away to America with Hannah, and it was just when I was going to propose to her and stuff. So it's like I knew that, and that was a holiday was coming up in September, so it would have been the day after the show. So I thought I could go on holiday being shredded, but I was like, going to America being shredded probably wouldn't be smart because I like to eat. So I thought, do you know what? No, I'm not. I'm going to turn down the invite. I'm happy with what I did. I'm going to stick with that. So I started trying to reverse diet, and I was like, right, okay, cool. I did it. Okay, just have this. I'll just have this. And fuck me, like I went from then 86 to 90. I think it was 98. As like, and don't get me wrong, I then come back down a little bit because obviously it's just the overinflation of food and everything. But so I put on over, I think, 13 kilos, right? And I was just like, and that was in I think the space of about 2 weeks. And I was like, what have I done? And then
like a kilo a day,
mate, it was bad. And I still had abs, and I was like, what's going on? I don't understand it. But basically, I was just so bloated with food. And then when I cut out a lot of it, I come then back down to about like early 90s, and I was just like, okay. But then I just, and then by the time I got to America, I was just a bit chubbier, and I was like, I'm gonna eat all I can now. And then we ate everything, but that was like a big mistake, like the reverse diet. Like I fucked that. And then my last one.
I love the idea of you plus 13 kilos with abs, just like, I'm invincible.
It didn't work though, because then the funny thing is, then when I started CrossFit, it kind of went to another where I still had the mindset of like a bodybuilder, getting in shape and stuff like that. My calories just way too low because I was like, I want to lose a bit of weight and stuff like that, because I was going on holiday to Ibiza, and I got in really good shape. I was really happy. I got down to like 92 kilos. I think I looked great and stuff like that, but I felt like shit. And I was talking to Liam from PH, obviously a friend of the show, and we had done a blood test. My testosterone was like a young girl. It was so bad. It was just like, it was zero, but it was so bad. And basically I was doing so much work, and especially when you start CrossFit, you're so keen. And it's like I was doing everything. I was doing like the strength, the metcons, the gymnastics, spending time practicing. And at the time, I remember my PT business started to drop down because I was putting too much pressure basically on me training, and that was then the wrong focus. I was taking my focus away from the business and focusing more on my training, and I was putting everything into it, and I just wasn't fueling myself. And yeah, it come out. That was probably one of my biggest mistakes. Whereas I didn't have the education, but then I started working with Liam, got the education, kind of understood the thing of, you can't really bodybuilding diet and perform like that. Like if you want to do better at that, and that was where it was learning the balance between the two. And I think they're kind of like, I'd say, my three main nutritional mistakes. And I think they're just extremes. And that's been, I think, a common thing for me is I like to put myself to extremes because I like to see what I can do. But it's good to probably have a bit of guidance some of the time.
Definitely. I think that's quite a common theme, is the underfueling for performance training. And if you're in the gym to increase your output and actually perform rather than just train for aesthetics or for health, then having enough fuel in the tank is a really common pitfall. And it reminds me of a similar experience I had where I think I referenced it before when I did my open in 2017, just after I had my appendix out. So I had 6 weeks of absolutely no training, and I was experimenting with the ketogenic diet at the time as well, which, when you're not training, is phenomenal. I felt amazing. I was still relatively lean, but had done no fitness. And then I had this the gym I worked at in Australia for the 5th workout of the open, or the last workout, would always do a box battle against another local box. And I was scheduled to go at some point in the afternoon, and so I'd had my bulletproof coffee in the morning, of course, and then I thought, you know what, I'm doing a CrossFit workout today. I better have some carbs. I better have some fuel. So I had a bowl of porridge at about 11, thinking, yeah, I have 3 hours to digest it. That's about right. And then I'll be ready to rock at 2 p.m. And I was judging some of the early heats at this box battle, which was super fun, really good energy. And then someone came over to me and said, oh, someone's dropped out. You're up next. And I was like, what? Like, yeah, you've got to go now. I was like, fuck. So I...
but the insulin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just had a quick warm up, and I'd also just had a keto supplement, which is basically exogenous ketones and shitloads of caffeine. So I was full of porridge, absolutely buzzing, and did this little warm up. And 17.5 was 9 or 10 rounds of thrusters and double unders.
Oh god, I remember that workout. Yep,
it's the worst workout of my life, I think. And basically, having not done much CrossFit, having just returned from having my appendix out, and I started this workout, and there's people watching because obviously it's a box battle, and everyone's like, "Oh, go on, Coach Ash!" Yeah. And I came out of the gate, felt amazing because I was buzzing off all this caffeine, and did the first 2 or 3 rounds. And then one of the other coaches shouts like, "Ash, you're killing it. You're going to go to regionals if you keep this speed up." I looked at the clock and I was absolutely flying. I was like, did everything unbroken, no rest, because I just felt so good. And then it just hit me like a freight train in round 4 that I just absolutely bonked, had nothing left in the tank. I then could feel the porridge bouncing around. I just felt so sick. And I was looking around at the chalk buckets thinking like, I'm going to spew. I just need to find somewhere because the toilets are miles away. And it was just like the loneliest place ever after that, because everyone was watching me as I just like very suddenly went off a cliff and was tripping on my double unders, having to break my thrusters into tiny sets. And it was a lesson hard learned in fueling for competition and performance, but also that the ketogenic diet and lack of fitness doesn't really go with CrossFit performance. And yeah, I won't be forgetting that one in a hurry.
I mean, as you say, like when you're trying to fuel for a performance of whatever it is, or get your body composition to wherever it needs to be to get good at something, it is a skill, which is why obviously there's nutritionists, there's why there's coaches, there's why, because there's parts of it that you need to come from an outside bird's eye view, basically to say, this is probably how you should do it. Just like, when we give recommendations for reps to break things up and stuff, because we know that you've not suddenly got fitter, that it's like, this is just the energy of the day, this is the hype and stuff like that you're going to feel, which is good, and you want to harness that. But also you want to harness that, as we mentioned last week, you want to peak towards the end of the workout and then either come down or just as you cross the line at the highest peak, because it's like that means you're pushing, and it's like but it's so easy to get wrapped up, and especially with a workout like that one, because I remember that I didn't really have double unders, I kind of did. So now I was obviously like thrusters, I'm like, yeah, this is fine, and then like I'm going to do sets of 10, and it was what was it 9 and 30 or something like that, or was it 10 and
9 and 35 or 10 and 35?
Yeah, and it was just like I just remember, and then the last sort of double unders on like the last 3 rounds, it's just brutal. What about when you was doing your one arm pull up? I remember you said something about that.
Yes. Yeah, there's another mistake there in that, again, very ego driven, bit of a theme for the two of us there, is that in that year, we did WIT 30, and so it's a 30-day nutrition and lifestyle challenge, and all the members got assigned to a coach, divided either into a strength and size goal or a fat loss goal. And my group was a strength and size goal, so the challenge was in 30 days, who could put on the most muscle mass as measured by the bioimpedance scales. And in a gesture of solidarity with my team, I was telling them everything they needed to do, and it's like, you know what, I'm going to do this with you to sort of be in the trenches and give you some companionship going through the challenge. And I ended up winning by putting on about 6 kilos in a month, and it was good in that most, I think like 4.2 on the scales was muscle, which is great in terms of like muscle gain in a month. I think for me it was regaining rather than building for the first time, but it was terrible in that it's hard to then lose that. So I was then 6 kilos heavier than I was while trying to do a one-arm pull-up, which took, like, it probably took me, so that was May, I think we did it, probably took me until October or maybe even later before I started getting close to my starting weight. And I think that was my ego getting wrapped up in the challenge and taking my eyes off the actual prize of the one-arm pull-up, which is what I was working towards at the time. Well, yeah. And just short-term over long-term, again, the classic pitfall.
No. I mean, having these mistakes though, it's so good to be able to look back on, and actually, because as I say, we're laughing about them now because we've experienced them, and then we've also seen how foolish they are. Or it's like, but at the time you don't see this, and you're so focused on the now and the like. No, this is the right way, and it's normal to feel like that, and these mistakes are normal, but. As we get that external feel, even if you're not hiring a coach, you can talk to Ash and myself, other people that are in the industry, ask questions. Do you think this is the right thing to do? Because normally, if you're asking someone else, do you think? Yeah. It's probably not. You're just trying to get justification for it. So and I know that's when it comes to coming to myself. But so what about recently? I know that's obviously going back quite far. What mistakes would you say that you've recently had that you've seen and would change, even though you're as educated you are in certain areas and all these things, you've got all this experience. Obviously we all still make mistakes, so what are maybe some of the ones that come to light for you?
Yeah, I think last year when lockdown started and I was just getting into my running, I basically ramped up my volume super quick from doing almost none to 100 kilometers a month. And having had a host of sort of ankle ligament and knee ligament injuries from rugby and never done a sustained amount of running in my life ever, that's quite a big change for me. So I just got a couple of, I got a knee niggle, like one of my old injuries started rearing its ugly head. And luckily, knowing what I know now, I was able to address it with some help relatively quickly and without actually experiencing any serious consequences. But just that greedy acceleration for just thinking, I can do 100 kilometers, in a month. And in the back of my mind, I knew it wasn't the sensible thing to do, and it ended up slowing down my progress, which is the learning from it. Actually, a slow and steady build is almost always better. And that's probably the most recent one that comes to mind. How about you, mate? What's for you?
I think, I don't know whether you'd class it as a mistake, but the thing of me switching up training styles all the time, that's relatively recent for me, only because for me, my, say, training career has really only been over the last, say, 10 years. So, I've dabbled in bits before, like, you go to the school gym, do biceps and like that type of thing. But realistically, I say probably over the last 10 years were probably my thing. And I haven't stuck with anything. And whether that's a problem or whether that's kind of led to me being where I am now, where, as we touched on a minute ago, like, when I said I'm actually quite happy that I've experienced all these different training modalities and experienced these different things, because it's given me different experiences along the way and I've got to try different things. But parts of me does wonder, like maybe if I stuck out, say, with just powerlifting and I was still just doing powerlifting, where would I be now? And like good friend Adam, that he's still powerlifts and he's strong, and it's just amazing that he kind of got me into powerlifting. And like if I would have stuck with it, I wonder where I would be now. Like if I then didn't even do CrossFit. And it's like, but then CrossFit, like I think one of the ones which I think one of my biggest mistakes was one that you reminded me of, which just because we're talking about CrossFit, was just having Chloe, and obviously I didn't have Chloe, but just having Chloe and early doors. And I'm thinking, do you know what? So obviously she was born in July. And I then thought, I'm gonna try and be a pro athlete. I'm gonna go really hard for the open. I'm going to give it my all and everything. Obviously, in lack of sleep, and Chloe was not a good sleeper until she was probably about 18 months. And I remember talking with you, getting programming from you, and I gave it my all at the start. That, like, literally the first few weeks, And that's the reality of it. Only lasted the first few weeks because I just fell off a cliff because I was not in the right state. And I think this is in, because it's always hard, especially when you know what you're what you're capable of, right? But what you're capable of that day or that moment of your life isn't a reflection of what you're capable of in general. So you have to take into account all the states that you're in, and having a newborn and having those stresses in my life, they wasn't really good for helping me become a really good CrossFitter, because it was too much stress with coaching early, waking up early, not getting good sleep. Like, there's so many factors that were all contributing to it. Now, if you took me out of that and maybe put that, say, a couple of years prior, before having coach, stuff like that, maybe I might have had a really good open and a completely different scenario and stuff like that. But it was also extremely demoralizing, because it was like we worked on all my weaknesses, and training your weaknesses, as we mentioned earlier on, that was probably one of my mistakes. But not training your weaknesses is detrimental, because you obviously don't get better on across the board. And then especially with CrossFit, where you need to be good at so many different things, you need to get good at everything to bring them all up. But then training a lot of your weaknesses is really demoralizing, because you're shit at it. So not only when you're training, you're just thinking, fuck, I'm really struggling here, everything's really hard. And then obviously the lack of sleep, there's so many things in my life. And so going full blown CrossFit just after having Chloe, I'd say was probably one of the biggest mistakes I made recently.
I remember you just got your whoop as well, and it was just like the worst possible situation to have a whoop, where you just had a baby, so you're getting really poor sleep, and then your training volume shoots up, and you're training really hard in quite a stressful situation. And I remember your whoop just being quite unhappy with you on a
because I don't think it ever got happy with me. So over the duration of wearing it, so it was just one of those things. But do you know what? Again, I look back, and now, if we was to have another kid, that I'd understand. And but what was interesting actually is one of my clients who's just had another kid, and I said to him, look back at when you had your other kid, right, and remember how the stress, everything, like, remember that, right? Let's go this time round. We'll reduce the volume a little bit across the board. You still keep frequency up as much as you can, as much as you're able to, but we're just going to bring down that intensity, because you've got all the intensity coming from other places. And it was that reality where it was just like, actually, you're right there. And it's like, because he dieted down a little bit before the baby come, so he put his body into a bit of a better state, because he knows that it's going to be a little bit more free for all. Maybe when the baby's out, it's not going to be a priority. So he's kind of put himself into a better state before the baby come, and he's killing it at the moment, because he's doing the minimum, because at this moment in his life isn't made for peaking, because the priorities are elsewhere. So that was for me, because I've now made that mistake. I now know what I would probably think, and that I need to not. And that's the thing. And even if we do, we just make the mistake again, and then you're foolish. But you try and learn from it. So
exactly, I think that realization that stress is stress wherever it comes from hits everybody at some point, and you realize that whether it's like lack of sleep stress, work stress, relationship stress, or training stress, it all accumulates, and you can't have your cake and eat it, essentially. That, like, it is too much. If it's too much, it's too much. And you've got to try and manage it in whichever areas you can. But if you've just had a baby and they're disrupting your sleep, that's something that you can't really change. So something else has to give, and trying to do really high volume, intense training is an option. It's not mandatory. And I think I learned from that experience through you. Just seeing it happen. So thank you for
it's good, but I am grateful for that mistake, because it was just like a reality check for me, and it was actually from that point my whole outlook on training and everything, kind of, even like Hannah said to me the other day, she goes, because I was talking about like my ego and how I try to be a little less egotistical now. However, but I'm like, I love my ego, because that's what makes me want to beat other people. And when it comes to training, I feel that's the best way to train, because I don't want to be average. I want to be better than most, but that's what drives me with training. That's why with cycling, it's like I got two people I'm genuinely competing against, and I'm like, we're basically all at a similar sort of level. So I have to keep working, and that's purely my ego. And even trying to beat my dad in a race, who's nearly 60, I'm still trying to beat him because that's his thing. And it's like, but it's ego isn't a bad thing in that scenario for me, but it can make you it can become clouded with your judgment on things. And that's where I've learned, and from having Chloe, it gave me that opportunity to realize that, she made me a little less focus on being Mr. Big Bollocks at the time, and actually think about more like, maybe this isn't like when I'd go into a gym and back in the day into Virgin, and someone would be deadlifting and I'd go and lift like Jordan Shelley. Like I remember him deadlifting and I'd be completely cold, going deadlift his basically PB cold. And I'm like, why are you doing that? That is just trying to be alpha, but why on earth are you putting yourself on? And it's being young and dumb.
Yeah, I think that's it. So I think as a summary, like you can probably spot the common themes between all these mistakes, like some themes of impatience and trying to do too much too soon, or a lot of ego and bit of lack of education and willingness to adhere to structure seem to be the common pitfalls that have struck us. So anything else to add, Rob?
Well, I think a big takeaway that I would like the listeners to hopefully have got from today is you've said there, like the themes of the impatience, too much too soon, and this isn't a problem. Now this is what we I'd like to get across definitely from this is like, I don't regret anything I've done over the years, and all the mistakes that I've made, all the injury, like that's just part of it. It's built me to who I am now. But doing this episode was nice because I was able to like reflect back and look at where I've been and look at where I want to go, and see the things that have kind of held me back along the way, just to kind of remind me of them if they come up again in the future, which they most likely will, especially when I come back to say lifting strength and stuff like that, and I'll be like, well, I've lifted this before, it's like, no, ease into it, it's like, these are the realities, and it's like, I'm not going to change overnight. And the listeners, you've probably got certain habits that you just do. So it's like, it's definitely worth that reflection period of, even if you don't, it's not a new year, new me. This is just take a moment, and maybe it's nice to look back and reflect. So it was a really nice exercise with today. So
yeah, I'd agree, and learn from our mistakes. You don't have to repeat them, and learn for yourself, even though that's probably the most memorable way to do it. But take the opportunity to skip ahead.
Yeah, exactly. So as always, we'd like to thank you for your time for listening. Really appreciate it. Coming into our now second episode of season 2 of the Lunge and Lift podcast. As always, thank you to WIT, our sponsorship. You can go onto our website, lungeandlift.com, and you've got a nice little click through link on there, which is our code is LL15 for 15% off at checkout. And apart from that, again, thanks for your time. Thanks for listening. And as always, thanks for all your feedback. And we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.